Criminal defense attorney David Wolf, and he has an awful lot to say about this accident reconstruction scenario. So let me ask you first, when you've got an accident reconstruction that's been done for the prosecution and one that's been done for the defense, and they are so different as it seems these two are going to be, how does the jury, does it just come down to which one of them the jury believes?
Well, I mean, certainly that's going to be the final determination. What you have to recognize is, I bet in this case, although Ms. Roberts didn't present it in the prosecution, that many of the statistical numbers and the calculations from the formulas that are used for speed and impact and all those sorts of things were very similar. However, Ms. Roberts' team, the prosecution team, focused on the high end. In other words, when their expert says that Mr. Goodman was going 63 miles an hour, well, you cannot determine that. There has to be a range. Just like the defense expert said, who said it was 43 to 57 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And all that demonstrates is that everything here is not absolute. How you even make these calculations when they don't know where Mr. Goodman's car stopped, where it stopped skidding before the second impact. So there are a number of things that go into these things. Unfortunately, each side tries to focus on the good stuff.
For them.
Right. The prosecution expert said that the speed limit was 45 and ridiculously said that Mr. Wilson was going 44. There has to be a range, and if that's the low end of the range, which would have had to be what they focused on, that means the high end of the range was over 45, but it was inconsequential. The collision occurred likely because Mr. Goodman was going too fast.
Right, right. And that was I was going to say, it doesn't really matter what Wilson was going, because he's not the one that ran a stop sign.
Right, but what you have...
If he did indeed run a stop sign.
And even if he did, what you have to focus on was the two things that are charged against Goodman. Did the collision cause the death? Indirectly, it did. Unfortunately, no one knew that Wilson was in the water. Even the people that responded and made the calls to the police didn't know there was a second vehicle.
You're right, and but this is something that I want to get from Tina. Tina on Facebook wrote to us, and she's talking about this very thing. She said, how did he not know, meaning Goodman, how did he not know he ran into a car and pushed it off the road? Certainly other people that got there might not see it right away, but Goodman had to have known he hit something.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, I don't know that he knew what he hit, but yes, he hit something. I've not heard any talk about it. I don't know if Mr. Wilson's lights were on, but even if he hit Wilson's car, when he recovered Goodman and got out of the car, everyone agrees that Wilson's car was not visible. He looked around, you couldn't see it, and he started walking to call somebody. The people that arrived 7 or 8 minutes later and called the police said there's a one-car accident here. They waited around till another group of people came, and they didn't see the other car. And when the first group told the second group that the police were on the way, they started walking around, and that's when they saw. 15 minutes after the first couple got there, oh my God, there's a car in the lagoon or the canal.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether or not he knew and whether or not he could have done anything, I don't know, but it's clear that Mr. Wilson drowned.
Very interesting. Darcy wrote to us as well on Facebook saying, if I was a juror, I wouldn't even pay attention to the friends the defense calls as witnesses. What friend is going to say, oh yeah, he was drunk? You're a criminal defense attorney. How do you determine who is worth calling and who isn't?
It's interesting in a criminal case. You know, when they say, where were you last night at 2:40? Well, I was at home with my husband. Well, of course your husband's going to say that. I was with my girlfriend. Of course your girlfriend was going to say that. So you have to start hanging around with strangers if, in fact, you're going to end up on trial, I guess. But most critically, what about all the friends that Ms. Roberts called? The prosecutor said specifically that I never use independent reconstruction experts or experts. I always use the same team. She uses her friends. She uses people that get on the stand and testify to the friendly aspect of all of these investigations, just like the 44 miles an hour. Boy, luckily he was going under the speed limit. Just like the top end 63 miles an hour, when those calculations cannot be made to an exact number.
Okay.
So friends are on both sides.
Bernie wrote to us too on my Facebook page and said, if the car had faulty brakes, as you know, the defense is contending, wouldn't the car company step in and do an investigation on that car if it was involved in a fatal accident? And that was the claim. Is that common? Is that what, does that happen ever?
Well, sure. I'm sure all of these things happened. Law enforcement had access to the vehicle. They seized it as evidence. But the way I understand the testimony, Goodman said that his told law enforcement that the brakes weren't working like they usually do. And there was an allegation that there was an acceleration problem with the fuel injection system.
That it surged forward when he was sitting at the stop sign.
That's correct.
And that's what caused the crash.
And whether or not he could have been sitting at the stop sign and even gotten to the low end of 43 with a rocket behind him, as Ms. Roberts said, is an interesting issue. That's why, if I were defending this, I would have focused in part on the fact that the collision didn't cause the death directly, and had he known, perhaps some more could have been done, and perhaps we have a lesser offense that he was guilty of.
As opposed to the failure to render aid.
Precisely, because he didn't know someone was there.
Okay, I gotcha. David, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
So good to have you with us
pleasure.
today.
Nice
We
meeting you.
appreciate it.